Madden Benz Unfiltered here on a Tuesday after the Memorial Day weekend, so we're a day late, but plenty to talk about. Before we begin, Mark, like Le'Veon Bell, did you get high before this performance to prep yourself?
If only I had some.
What did you make of that? How much of that do you think is real? How much of that is a plea for relevance?
I think it's probably real and a plea for relevance. I have no doubt he got high before games. I think a lot of guys do in the NFL. And I'm not sure it's even a bad thing depending on the potency of the dope because, you know, if you relax a little bit, then come down, I think you're kind of more loosened up to play. Not that I've ever indulged before an athletic event. At least I haven't, done anything physical for so long. I really don't remember. But, yeah, I'm sure he did it. I'm also sure he really sees the end coming in terms of people talking about him, and he's trying to prolong that.
It certainly does lend credence, though, to some of the talk that the Steelers weren't willing to go above and beyond what they previously had offered him because they were worried about him popping another positive.
Well, right. And he already had, 2 pot suspensions, correct?
He was already suspended for 3 games as it was.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell made his own bid, 100%. Whatever bad has happened to him, however quickly he's faded from the public eye and from good financial return, he deserves it. He made his own bed. Now it's time to lie down. And I really do wish it'd go away, except a part of me takes guilty pleasure in A, seeing him kind of flail, and B, just the pathetic nature.
Well, maybe when Antonio Brown comes back and plays in his own arena league eventually, as he's promised to do, he can bring Lev with him and they can reunite. I think that would be great. That'd be a boom for the business community in Albany.
Well, AB fired the coach.
Multiple times. Yes. He's had like 3 different coaches already and one guy twice.
Yeah, you'd have to be nuts to work for him because you won't get paid. He doesn't pay people that he owes money to. His agent, and I don't know who that is, and I can't believe he still has one, but has said that AB is going to try to get to an NFL camp. I can't believe any NFL camp would bring him in. I can't believe that.
No, and I also believe that he can't pass his own league's physical, which is why he didn't play. I mean, remember, he was getting ready to sue or something over that ankle injury that he had, and now as a result, he's not playing. He said there was a problem getting through the paperwork of the physical. Well, it's probably because he failed his own physical and they didn't know how to get around that with the league. I'm guessing that's what the issue was.
You think he's broke yet, Tim?
Physically? Or you mean like financially broke?
Yep.
Got to be close. Must have had some money to get in with the Arena League, but I can't imagine that's turning a profit at this point.
And he's in Albany, Tim. Not a lot of rich people in Albany.
All right, let's get to some stuff that is more pertinent and happening at least more recently. And it's not going to be about sports, Mark. We promised this would be the case. We're going to talk a lot about...
First off, Tim, one thing. I take that back. There are rich people in Albany. Every town has rich people. For example, Jasper, Missouri with Brad Wesley.
I don't know. That's not a reference I'm getting.
Oh, come on, Tim. Roadhouse.
Oh, okay. He's from Albany?
No. He was a rich guy in Jasper, Missouri.
Okay.
That's the point. Every town has rich guys.
Oh, I thought you were talking specifically about Albany.
Tim, he brought J.C. Penney's to Jasper. Ask anybody.
Well, there's plenty of rich folks in Albany. It's all the crooked politicians from New York City. That's who's rich in Albany. So maybe that's who Antonio Brown has to cozy up to.
No, he should cozy up to Tom Wamsgans.
Yeah, because that's the main point that we need to get to today, which is succession. And we need to talk about the series finale from Sunday night with that because you loved it, right? I mean, you thought it hit every note, correct?
Yeah, and I was rooting for Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I had thought that either Kendall would become his dad through merciless machinations like his dad was famous for, or one of the dopes would win, either Tom or Greg. And Tom won. And at the end, Shiv was metaphorically kissing his ring, and they're probably going to be married again. Live as husband and wife, rather, again. So I thought it was perfect.
Did you have any problem buying that heel turn from Shiv or not? Did you have any problem with her deciding to side with the husband that she loathes instead of the brother that she hated at the last minute?
I think she saw it as the better bet personally. I think she saw more gain for herself going to Tom's camp than remaining in Kendall's camp. I thought that was a big part of her decision. But I just think those three were so unhinged by their father's death, and unhinged to begin with, that finish was in keeping with that.
There was a lot of scuttlebutt on the internet not liking Shiv's decision, that it wasn't feminist enough, that it wasn't strong enough, that it was a weak decision. People are mad about that online.
Tim, my right hand is making the traditional gesture.
Well, you can't. That's my point, is you can't just have a television show end. Everything has to be some sort of greater meaning, you know?
Now here's a question. What was the cheapest shot when the three siblings were in the room? What was the cheapest shot said? Because they just excoriated each other.
Oh, I think it was something I didn't either remember the reference or slept through it or missed it, but something about Kendall's kids not being his.
Right. Well, Roman pointed out that Kendall's kids are adopted.
Are they both adopted?
Yes, they're both adopted, so they're part of the bloodline. They're not part of the bloodline.
See, I thought the implication was at least one of them was not his biologically because his wife got pregnant by a pool boy or something like that. Wasn't the reference?
I just know that he said they weren't part of the bloodline.
Well, that was a cheap shot. Yeah, that was my favorite. I thought that was the one that was the tipping point. Did you have one that was better than that? Because that was a great scene.
No, that's it. That's it. That was a great scene. And it really tied together the insanity of the family in the series.
And then there was the part where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's like, oh, the kid that I killed in England, I made the whole thing up. It never happened. Like a desperate plea to try to get back on the tracks.
Well, right, because he's flailing.
Yes.
That whole last scene with the three siblings was about each flailing.
And I don't know. I thought it was a good ending. It's not everything I wanted to see happen. I was sort of rooting for one of them to. I had an investment in one of the three winning. I wanted to see two of them lose and one win, and it ended up just being Tom. So I was a little disappointed there because you can't say Shiv won. She just got the lesser of two evils. She's still trapped.
Oh no, Shiv didn't win. Shiv surrendered.
Yes.
To Tom. I love that scene where Tom put his hand out. And she didn't hold it. It was the metaphoric equivalent of kissing the ring. It was tremendous.
That meme is going to be around forever on Twitter. You're going to see that 1,000 times in the years to come. In fact, Mark, we might see it again very, very quickly if it's Kyle Dubas and Mike Sullivan together in the backseat of the limo, don't you think?
Well, one last thing about Succession. Greg is back to being Greg.
Yeah, he's the bitch boy again.
Yeah, that's tremendous, too. I liked how Mattson referred to him as Judas for the team picture. We got Jesus and the disciples here. Look, Judas is even in the room. I think today's the day they probably hired Dubas, or at least we know he's not coming to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and he would obviously then be holding out for Ottawa. Is that a smarter move?
If you knew for sure you would get Ottawa in a year, yes. If you knew for sure, but you don't know for sure.
What if you're the current guy in Ottawa and you see Dubas pass on the Penguins job? Then you know he's been promised it, right? For those exact reasons?
I don't know if you know that at all. I mean, the ownership hasn't changed yet, correct? It's not been approved yet. I mean, I think there's still several groups involved, right?
I think, isn't there some issue with one group trying to merge with the other or something like that?
Well, that's the point. It's inexact, Tim. So if I were Dubas, I probably would take the Penguins job. I would not wait. And then again, that depends on my family, my financial situation, all that.
Well, that's the other thing, too. I mean, whether it's Ottawa or not, it's not like Ottawa is going to be the only job that's open next year. I mean, GMs will be fired in other places. And if he's so burnt out and he's so concerned about moving his family and he wasn't going to be somebody who pops up somewhere else as he tried to, woo everybody into thinking when it was more about his decisions than the Leafs at the time, well, then don't take this one. Then sit out a year. There'll be something else. It might not be the Senators, but there'll be something else next year.
Well, right, but the Penguins job, it's not attractive in terms of the roster, the no movement clauses, the possible power struggle with Sullivan, although I don't think that'll be a problem, Tim. I've been told Dubas has been guaranteed full roster control and a direct line of communication with Fenway Sports Group. Now, the key hump for him to get over would be to go to Sullivan and say, listen, you have to coach your team according to the talent you're provided, not the way you want to in your fantasy land of speed, skill, and playing the game the right way. and that'll be a major hump to get over. But in terms of Fenway Sports Group paying top-flight executives handsomely and backing them fully, it's a good place to go to. It's a good job.
So if he gets here, how long is he given to turn the Penguins around? I mean, in your mind, how much time does he have? Because there's that weird dynamic of it's going to take a while to do, but at the same time, you got to do it fast because you have to maximize the window for Sid, Malkin, and Letang.
You don't have to maximize the window for nobody if it ain't possible.
So would he then be the first admission that they're getting ready to turn the page then beyond those three?
I don't know what they're going to do, but you don't have to maximize for nobody. I mean, they've done a lot for the franchise. The franchise done a lot for them too. And I think it's impossible to win anymore with this group. And that's not a knock on those three. That's a knock on who's been assembled around them, but it's nonetheless impossible.
Yeah, well, it's also impossible in terms of roster construct too. I mean, that's the other thing that makes it impossible. It's not just can you keep winning with them as far as who they are as players. It's the cost of keeping them and the limitations that rise as a result. Plus the other people that they've tied up.
It's the bummy players they've got too. Like I wrote in my Trib column for today. You know, to get rid of Granlund, you're going to have to give away a third-round pick at least. You're going to have to trade Granlund and a third-round pick for nothing. Yeah. That's what you'll have to do. I would say a second-round pick, but Hextall already traded that for Granlund. But yeah, it's a tough job. Make no mistake. But wouldn't you want a good general manager for a tough job?
Yeah, and I think he could do a decent job and maybe better than anyone else. I mean, Matthew Darche is the guy I've been backing because I just want to see somebody with a little Tampa Bay shine on them. I think that makes for an attractive hire, especially if it's not Dubas. I think he's the best clear-cut candidate of who remains. I know there's a lot of people.
I think Dubas is a better choice to sift through the rubble.
Because it's been there once before.
He'll understand its rubble. And that's going to be a tough part of the GM job too, is getting through to the players and coach that this isn't close to anything. Like, I believe the Penguins will have to make some trades like I talked about to get rid of Granlund and take some steps backwards this year to try to step forward next year. And if that doesn't fit the Sid, Gino, and Letang timetable, well, like I said, you can't change what's impossible. You know, like some friendly team's not going to say, hey, look, we know you're on a tight window with Sid, Gino, and Letang. How about we just take Granlund and Rutta off your hands for free?
All right, Penguins fans. Go ahead, Mark.
It's going to be hard done, and especially quickly.
All right, Penguins fans, go ahead and comment now on the GM search, where you think the franchise should go, how you think it's going, and how will it look if Dubas doesn't take the job and it's someone else besides him, since he's been such the focal point of conversation for the last 2 weeks. Mark, the finals are set now. Who do you like?
Well, I like boredom over tedium and never-ending overtime. I think Vegas has the better team, but I think Florida has the better goaltending, which makes it a close matchup, if not an exciting one. I'm kind of rooting for Vegas because if Eichel, in his first ever playoff appearance, wins a cup before McDavid, that puts major heat on McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people are really addressing that right now, do you?
No, because I think Tkachuk has become a big enough story unto himself that he's being advanced as the biggest star in the playoffs, and Eichel's almost been forgot about in that context.
No. Tkachuk is the biggest star in the playoffs. Eichel's been the best player at Vegas, although that's been kind of a group portrait. But if Eichel eliminates McDavid and then wins the Stanley Cup after they went 1-2, McDavid first in the 2015 draft, that's a hell of a story that will be written again and again.
You know, it's like from a hockey standpoint, one of the teams in the finals isn't even the biggest story in its own city right now because the Heat managed to win against Boston too last night. So they got to the final against Jokic in Denver. Speaking of what the ratings might look like, how about that on the NBA side?
Oh, did they come out yet, the ratings?
No, I'm just saying what the final will be between those two cities.
I think it's a ratings nightmare for the NHL based on who's in the final, never mind the matchup in the NBA. I'm not sure Miami's a big ratings draw nationally in the NBA, and I know Denver's not.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think it's kind of similar for both, but at the same time, like you got the Florida Panthers advancing to the Stanley Cup final. It just so happens to come in a year where the Miami Heat are there too. So they can't even get the whole shine in their own market.
And I think Denver's going to do a number on Miami, don't you? I think it's going to be really short given the rest Denver had. I think rest helps more in basketball than it does in hockey. I think with that Florida Vegas series, with Florida having been off 10 days, I think that'll hurt Florida the first game, then help them immensely afterwards. They'll need to knock a little rust off in game one, but after that, it'll help them.
Yeah, and I wonder about Miami having to go to Denver, making those trips back and forth to Colorado, and then having to play out there. So
how about the Celtics, Tim? They get slaughtered the first 3 games, then they choke in game 7. They found every which way they can to anger their fans.
Yeah, exactly. It was sort of like the descent, the rise, and then they descended again, and they just were not good from about the middle of the third quarter on. They had a push there for a little bit in the third, and from the mid-third on, it was all Miami, and it was just a hard watch by the end because
to be fair, Tim, once Tatum rolled his ankle, they were in a lot of trouble. Yeah, and he persevered. I give him credit, but he wasn't good enough. And like you said, they kept it together for a bit and then just rolled over and died.
How about the Pirates and the way they're fading, Mark? I thought you had a good line in the podcast. Memorial Day 500 on DVE. Pirates under 500 on Memorial Day now, and I don't think they're coming back. What was your number? Three under 500. Once they get there, they're not coming back, right?
If they get to 3 under 500, they won't be under 5. Excuse me. 3 under 500 means they won't be over 500 again the rest of the year. By the way, Stairway to Heaven, number 1. I know it's classic rock, so you don't exactly inject new songs in the mix.
Yeah.
And I'm the biggest Led Zeppelin fan there is. I would be happy to never hear Stairway to Heaven again.
See, I go the other way on Stairway to Heaven because I just, I listen to what I want to listen to so much easier now, with how we consume music as opposed to just listening to what's on the radio. So I don't hear Stairway too often anymore unless I want to. And then I listen to it, and I feel like I'm listening to a new song now because I'm not hearing it every 10 minutes.
Yeah, when I go to see Zeppelin tribute bands, it's not like I take a bathroom break during Stairway to Heaven. That's usually during the drum solo or maybe Battle of Evermore if they do it. But it is funny. And I love the Memorial Day 500 on DV. I love the presentation and the anticipation and the outrage on Twitter, like Jonathan Bomboli of the Trib getting mad with every song he hears. But I
love that Jonathan gets more mad about the Memorial Day 500 than anything he's ever written or covered from a hockey standpoint ever.
No question. But by the same token, I respect the notion that people have the grill. They have, maybe they watch the Pirate game with the sound on, and they have the Memorial Day 500 on all weekend.
Well, it's a good thing they were listening to something else besides the Pirate game yesterday. Wow.
But anyway, but it is funny that people listen with anticipation to a process where they're relatively sure almost exactly how it's going to end. Like it's going to be Freebird and Stairway to Heaven and what else? Hotel California, maybe. I didn't see the final 5 yet.
Yeah, I think
Sweet Emotion got in the top 10 from Aerosmith. That was my biggest surprise from what I have seen.
I just want to know how it varies as much as it does year to year. Like, what has changed in the vote?
What makes it change? Well, do they vote? Is there a vote, or do they pretty much do whatever they want?
Well, it has been fans in the past. Then we've picked the songs as a station conglomerate, or it's been based on spins and requests. I mean, there's been different ways as to how it's judged. I don't know what it was this year.
Oh, here it is, Tim. On Twitter, breaking the big appointment.
What's that?
Liverpool can confirm George Schmatke has been appointed as the club's new sporting director.
Not exactly the FSG-related announcement that we've been waiting for. So now, wait a minute. There might be something. So what does that mean, Mark? What's that role in soccer as opposed to hockey? What's the equivalent?
It kind of means he's the GM, but not really. He's well, it might be the way it turns out here in Pittsburgh, Tim. He's the GM, but Klopp has the power, the coach.
Well, there's actually maybe a Penguins thread to this because weren't we all waiting for them to come back from Monaco from the car race to do something? So maybe now that's the first domino that falls. They do Liverpool today, and maybe they do the Penguins tomorrow.
I don't know. I don't think they know. I think whenever Dubas says yes, they say that he's the GM. By the way, okay, here was the top 3. I'm reading off Twitter. Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd, 3. Freebird, 2. Stairway, 1. Bohemian Rhapsody, 4. Sympathy for the Devil, 6. Dream On by Aerosmith, 5.
Yeah, see, that's not my favorite Queen song by a mile. Somebody Love is my favorite Queen song.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's popular demand. See, I'm not a Dream On fan either. That's my Aerosmith song. I don't care if I ever heard again. In various Aerosmith books, Joe Perry's first wife, Alyssa, used to just stand on the side of the stage and make like a puking gesture whenever Dream On came on. She said she hated it.
All right, let's get to some comments here because we're running low on time. By the way, you can comment on Succession, too. All I'm seeing is sports stuff here. I wanted to get some people to comment.
You can comment on the Memorial Day 500, too.
Yeah, go ahead and comment on the Memorial Day 500. I mean, we are in the dregs now. It is officially after Memorial Day, and the Penguins haven't been playing for a couple months. The Pirates are about ready to become the Pirates again, and the Steelers don't do something meaningful until August, really. So let's
never mind Memorial Day, Tim. Except for Liverpool and the Penguins, I have never cared less about sports. This is a job, so let's do the job.
This is what, let's see, the Southwest Something Ball Hockey League says. What about Darsh coming to the Berg? I'd be all in favor of it. I like him as a candidate. You said you're okay with him if it's not Dubas, Mark?
Yeah. I think he's the second best choice. My worry is that Greeley, if he gets it, he's like a Sullivan crony.
Yeah, because isn't he the BU guy? He was the one that came from Dallas.
Then things don't change much.
This guy also adds, I have a gut feeling Dubas says no. Somebody else in here, I didn't see where it was talking about how much money Dubas was going to demand. Oh, is that from the Memorial Day 500? Or is it Kyle Dubas?
It might be. No, it's not Kyle Dubas. I did text Dubas. He never texted back.
Well, yeah, you said you know each other, have met once through wrestling circles,
met once.
Right?
He was a fan of my work in wrestling, believe it or not.
I want to know what Kyle Dubas has from an analytical perspective for wrestling. Could he apply an analytical construct to wrestling? That's what I want to know.
If he could have, where was he in 99?
This guy also says, what about Eddie O to the Berg? Thoughts? Well, you and I had some thoughts about it on the podcast, and we both were of the opinion this is going to be largely a ceremonial role. And if nothing else, maybe a conduit go-between buffer, if you will, between Sullivan and whoever the GM is. Although I thought you made an interesting point. Why does Sullivan deserve to have a buffer at this point?
Hasn't won a playoff series since 2018. As far as I'm concerned, the bloom's off his rose. He has reached a phrase that we used for Dan Bylsma for many years. And Dan won more playoff series than Sullivan after he won cups. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. The last 6 years of Dan Bylsma's tenure, at least postseason-wise, were much better than Mike Sullivan's.
But there was a phrase we used with Bylsma back when, Tim. Bylsma's a good coach, but, and you hear it now with Sullivan all the time, he doesn't deserve a buffer. He needs to do what he's told. And that won't happen. Richard
says Dubas is likely making sure he has control before taking the Pens job. He needs to be Sullivan's boss and not vice versa. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the point we've been making. But
he's already been told he has roster autonomy and a direct line of communication with Fenway. I'm not sure what else you could give him to dictate that he's the boss.
I would think now that the convincing mark would have to be done with Sullivan, not with Dubas. I mean, if the
Sullivan won't be the coach in 18 more months.
Regardless of who the GM is, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Because Fenway loves him now, but when this team keeps fading, and especially if it keeps fading because they insist on doing things the same way, and any GM's going to want to appoint his own coach. You know, and I know FSG loves Sullivan. Someone who works in the Penguins organization said that FSG thinks Sullivan is their Belichick, but that's going to change. You watch. I hope it doesn't. See, I feel like I'm ripping Sully here. I don't want to, but I see the change is needed.
This is Eric. He says Ottinger crapped the bed with an .895 save percentage in the playoffs. Is that playoff wide or is that just the final?
Well, he was rotten.
Sorry, the conference final. Yeah.
He was
either
rotten.
Way.
Hey, the goal, except for Bob, the goaltending in these playoffs has been terrible.
Well, it shows who the state of goaltending is. Everybody's been marginalized. You know, everybody's kind of the same. That's like kind of what the market's going to be like for Tristan Jarry. You wrote about him too for the Trib recently.
Yeah, that's going to be posted any minute. I wrote an article about the goaltending. Like you said, Oh, I lost my train of thought, Tim. Don't get old. But, yeah, I don't want Jari at the price he's going to command. I just don't.
I did see something that suggested.
Oh, Rob Rossi. I was talking to Rossi last night, and he said the Penguins, and he was kidding. And he said the Penguins should go to the KHL, the Russian league, right? Mm-hmm. And get whatever Russian goaltender had the best year that isn't owned by an NHL team. And we were laughing. And then I said, that's not the worst idea ever. And he goes, yeah, really? Just thinking out loud. Maybe you'd look into that.
No, it's not a bad idea, especially since
I want a Russian goalie, Tim. You could pretend he's Vasilevsky or maybe even Tretiak.
Let's go to Sean, who says you can't waste Crosby's last year's and Sullivan's dated methods.
Okay. Crosby wants to play the way Sullivan dictates. Okay, so let's not act like the blame only goes on one person there.
Ba Goldstein says DVE should have played Dr. Love 500 times from Kiss. I did not see Kiss in Columbus. I was just there for the first night. I wonder how that went over.
Shame on you. Shame on you. Dr. Love 500 times, Tim, that would be the cure I'm thinking of.
He also adds the Panthers are giving 07 Rockies vibes, a last-minute playoff clinch, tearing through playoff favorites, but ultimately defeated in the final. Yeah, I could see that. If the Golden Knights are just the better team, I think there's a lot of merit, Mark, to the approach that you've had in talking about Vegas. They surprised both of us. We were talking about this in the preseason. I remember that Vegas was going to have a down year and was probably overvalued in Vegas.
I hate their roster. I still hate their roster.
They've got a bunch of second lines, and the second lines are doing the job because that's what playoff hockey is now.
No, they don't really have a bunch of second lines anymore. They went star power to some degree with Stone and Eichel and so forth. So they have.
Is Stone a star? Like, do you consider Stone a star?
Even more so in a playoff scenario. He's a playoff type player.
Michael says, can the Penguins trade Granlund, Carter, Petrie, Friedman, and Ron Hextall's contract to the Flyers for Carter Hart? What would GM Ron Hextall have made that deal? It's not about getting anything in return for those guys. It's who will take them off your hands the fastest.
Who will take the cap hit?
Yes, exactly. Who will absorb them, not what you're going to get back.
I've been saying, in fact, I got to remember to say this on my show. I'm going to write it down on my clipboard here. You don't lose the cap hit, and you got to pay the guy. But I would say to Jeff Carter, listen, we're sending you to Wilkes. You'll clear waivers, okay? And you will get your full salary. We will absorb the full cap hit. You're going to be riding the bus, my friend. Do you really want to ride the bus? Let us know if you don't.
Lastly, Eric says, Hayes is atrocious at the plate. 4 Ks on Sunday. Did he have 4 strikeouts on Sunday? I didn't see that. My God, is his defense really worth that contract the Pirates gave him?
No, it's not. It's 4 Ks. 5 Ks is the golden sombrero, right?
No, it's 4. 5. I don't know what goes beyond the golden sombrero, but it's usually referred to as 4.
It's 5 Ks. Did Hayes strike out 5 times or 4 times?
I missed that. To be honest, I wasn't paying attention to the game all that much on Sunday, but
I wasn't paying attention to it at all. Yeah, it is 4 times in the game.
Yeah, 5 is I just think they gave him the golden sombrero because they didn't figure anybody could strike out 5 times in a game when that phrase was invented.
Oh, I think if anybody can, it's Hayes.
Eventually, you're going to jump in front of a pitch or something like that to get hit so you don't get struck out again.
I got to see. If I have another reason I can make fun of Hayes, Tim, I got to look this up because I said from the beginning that contract was a disaster, and I understand why they signed it because you got to sign somebody. But one reason the Pirates are doing as poorly as they are, Tim, is that the guys who make the most money aren't doing enough. Reynolds is only okay. Hayes is terrible. How about when Reynolds laid out and made that catch yesterday when it was 13-4? I mean, is that admirable or stupid?
Well, I mean, it's baseball, so you only have individual moments strung together. So I guess you got to do it, right?
Tim Hayes didn't even play yesterday.
Yeah, but yesterday was Monday. This guy said Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, the hell with it then. That's old news.
Finally, Mark, Succession movie or Succession sequel? Does it happen? I see more room for a Succession movie, sort of like El Camino and Breaking Bad, than I do a sequel. How about you?
Well, from what stance would you do the sequel?
I would do a 90-minute movie around what Roman Roy is doing now. That's what I would do.
See, I think the key would be how many of the original cast would you be able to get involved?
Mm-hmm. Let's see what they're doing over the next couple of years and give them time to need some money.
If there's a main character besides Brian Cox who's dead, you don't have to bring him back unless you do a prequel.
That I could see, but then how do you de-age Brian Cox? I don't know how you do that.
Well, you see, I think the key is that you have to get Jeremy Strong involved because I think in retrospect, he was the main character in the series.
Yes. Especially the last season.
Yeah, Hayes did strike out 4 times.
In 5 at-bats, yes. Yeah, especially in the last season. And frankly, he did move the show along. He was the plot churner more even than Brian Cox.
And the best actor.
Yeah.
As much as Brian Cox. Like, don't get me wrong, that series was full of great thespians, but I thought Jeremy Strong's brilliant. And apparently nuts. Yeah,
he's a method actor. Just read the story about him walking into the other writer's room of a different show and asking if they could use your bathroom because he was lost. And he wanted to get the feel of somebody asking, where's the restroom? He's that nuts when it comes to the method acting stuff.
You know, I mean, whatever works, right? I think he's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. You know, and then I think Brian Cox got wind of it and sort of did the Laurence Olivier, why don't you try acting, my boy, response to what he was hearing.
Well, only Brian Cox could say that, though.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Only Brian Cox could be so diverse an actor as to nail Super Troopers and Churchill and Succession. Am I right?
Yes, exactly.
Did you see his Churchill movie?
What's that?
Brian Cox's Churchill movie where he plays Churchill?
I knew he played him. I read that somewhere, but I didn't see it. No.
It was really good. He was really good at it.
All right. We got to roll, so that'll do it for us. We're back next week. And Mark will start reviewing, Ted Lasso? You're going back in time and watching Ted Lasso?
Well, I watched the first episode, and I've thought about it since I watched it.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who saw the whole series told me I wouldn't like it.
I thought you wouldn't either.
Was it you who said that? Maybe it was you who said that on the podcast.
I said that on the podcast yesterday. I thought because of the whole soccer thing, your soccer sensibilities would be offended by the fact.
Didn't you say it gets too preachy?
I thought it gets. In the 3rd and 4th season or whatever season they're on now, it's.
Well, what's funny? There were elements of preachiness in the very first episode.
Yeah, if you go back and it looked like nice and fun, and isn't this kumbaya kind of show? But now you can see where the seeds were planted.
That said, Sudeikis is foolproof.
Yeah,
he really is. He's a comic actor. And the guy who plays Roy Kent.
Yes, yeah.
Which is based on Man United's Roy Keane.
Okay.
Well, I hated Roy Keane, and I already hate this guy.
All right, we're back next week for Madden Benz Unfiltered. Listen to Mark today, Monday through Friday, 3 until 6. If you haven't listened to the podcast yet, it's up online at Trib Live.